I'm Hannah Wallace and welcome to FinextraTV. With me now, speaking in the lead up to EBAday 2022, is Jan van Vonno, Director of Research at Tink. Jan, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Really good to have you on, and we're touching on some really interesting topics in today's interview: open finance and this idea of an open data economy. So let's start there. What do you think has been the main driver for the shift from open banking to open finance? And tell us, what has this meant for Tink?
So first of all, Hannah, I think it's important that we set the record straight. Open finance exists today. It's all around us, and it's been happening for the past 10 or 20 years. The discussion around open finance is largely about, I guess, the prospects of potential future regulations that will allow the current open banking ecosystem to move beyond some of the limitations presented in PSD2. It also refers back to the digital finance strategy that the European Commission published back in September 2020, and where they shared that by 2024, they hope to put in place this open finance framework, because they realize that many of the consumers that have been using open banking technologies realize that they could get more out of their financial profile if their service provider could only access that information. So they've been largely disappointed at that, but the idea is, of course, to move a little bit beyond that. So Tink was founded back in 2012, and I think through the acquisitions that we made with Instantor, FinTech Systems, Eurobit, we have open banking and open finance experience going back to all the way to 2001 even. And today we're still accessing non-PSD2 related information. So occasionally that is credit card information or loan information. In fact, it's even investment or mortgage information in certain markets. But the focus for us has largely been in the short term on PSD2, making sure that our connectivity works, and building out the use cases that are allowing primarily our financial institutions as customers or enterprise customers to enhance their core banking services. The outlook with the Data Act, Data Governance Act, and potentially Digital Services Act is going to unlock a lot of new opportunities. So from potentially getting better insights into your entire financial lives, by being able to better plan for retirement through transparent pension dashboards and pension schemes, and even being able to retrieve and analyze your tax tax submissions. I mean, the opportunities are really leading us to a data-driven financial services market.
Sure. A really positive note to begin on, and as you say, a lot of opportunities there. Thanks for bringing us up to date too. So tell us, what are your key insights for open finance in key countries beyond Europe, around the world?
Everywhere around the world, you'll find examples of open data, open banking, open finance today. In fact, it's a misconception that open banking started with PSD2 or with the CMA order in the UK. I mean, just in Europe, open banking has been around for decades. Now, going around the world, you'll find very similar examples. In Australia, there have been many smaller third-party providers accessing the customer interface via screen scraping technologies in order to create an overview of one's financial life, and in order to sort of create the first generations of financial management and personal financial management tools. But that's where you have some very strong demand, but where you get now a regulatory support for such movements as well. So that's where the consumer data right, for instance, is being introduced and is encouraging all the banks to create APIs to allow for so-called data intermediaries to access that information. Across the rest of the APAC market, for instance, it's really a mixed bag, with some countries really prohibiting this type of access to information, and they clearly have not developed the regulations required for true data-driven innovation, and for you as a consumer or as a business, the right to access your information. Whereas in other countries, this is really I mean, it's really accelerating. So take Korea, for instance. They suggest that nearly 70% of the Korean population is using open banking technologies. In Latin America, it's also really interesting. Nearly all Latin American countries are sort of looking at open banking initiatives, with Brazil obviously leading the pack there. But I think, when comparing all the countries, I think the European market is probably one of the most interesting ones because it is leading the pack. It has its history. It has a relatively progressive regulator. But there you see really clear maturity difference between the European countries. I mean, we often pride the UK market for having, they recently announced to have over 5 million monthly active open banking users. But if you compare that to, for instance, Sweden, over 60% of the population is using payment initiation technology through Tink today. And so you get a really big difference and clear difference in maturity of open banking and open finance around the world.
All right, that's really interesting, looking at what's going on beyond Europe. So let's talk about this idea of open data economies then. What do you see as the main requirements to unlock open data economies?
Yeah, so it's, some of the foundational points or principles that are articulated in PEC2 are really critical for an open data economy. So PEC2 has not just sort of introduced the notion of an account information service provider or a payment initiation service provider, but much more importantly, it has specified that these types of institutions are required to identify themselves towards a data holder or towards a service provider when they're accessing the account on behalf of a user. It specifies that such access may only happen with the explicit consent of the customer. And it also specifies that any information that is transferred or stored must be stored and must be encrypted and secured with state-of-the-art technology. Now, this is actually, for a large part, also embedded within GDPR, but it doesn't clearly provide the instructions to how financial institutions and how other businesses and data owners should interact with this, let's say, TPP ecosystem, this open data ecosystem. And so I see over the next couple of years, I'm expecting more clarity and principle-based regulations that will allow for this horizontal access, not just within the financial services industry, but also unlocking information across health, across government, and across other types of industries where you might have information and where businesses see value in extracting that information. But for that also to happen, we need a system of trust. And here again, I have to refer back to PEC2 and the technologies that have been introduced as a method for identification, the IDAS certificates, is a great template for how open banking economies can emerge across other industries.
Fascinating, really interesting there. Thank you so much for your foresight. Certainly a space to keep an eye on. But Jan, thank you so much. We'll leave it there and look forward to hearing more about what Tink's doing at EBAday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.